Hey all, Siege here, and today I want to talk about an idea that seems to be a hot-button topic in the Warframe community. Mainly the debate regarding scaling rewards for endurance-type missions. Obviously defense and survival missions are the most prominent of these, but I think you could make a case for excavation missions as well, right? The point is, there appears to be a rift among players in that many feel like there should be better rewards the longer a person stays engaged in the mission that continue to scale to some degree, especially after certain benchmarks, say after 30 minutes or even an hour. One area this feels especially necessary is in the new Kuva Survival missions, where the amount of Kuva a person receives, especially when staying in the survival for a long period of time, doesn't necessarily seem to be worth the effort, at least without a booster on, and even then, it's not as great as I feel it should be. If you haven't made it to the War Within quest, this game type will not be available. However, once you do, I highly recommend it, as not only is it a good time and a fun way to collect Kuva, either for assembling weapons or re-rolling ribbon mods, I've found it's a game type that does promote long runs even with random players, something I find to be quite rare these days. I generally like to play that way and can almost always get at least an hour in, so keep that in mind. And cheers to all of you so willing to stay in for so long, by the way. Personally, I'm a big fan of the Kuva Survival, so I've done quite a few, and for an hour run with no resource booster, I can typically get between 7,000 and 9,000 Kuva, depending on the team and how successful we are at using life support stations only for Kuva collecting. That's a fair amount of Kuva, don't get me wrong, yet it feels like a similar amount can be had by just running typical Kuva missions if they are done in succession. Again, randoms will do here, and it kind of has me wondering what the purpose is of having the Kuva Survival and dealing with scaling enemies and long play periods if you can get roughly the same amount by just hopping in and out of normal missions. While I agree the enemies are scaled differently for Kuva Siphons at 25 to 35 and Floods at 80 to 100, and this does add a level of difficulty to the mix, they are still relatively short and require much less effort in the aggregate to get a similar amount of Kuva. That just seems off a bit, doesn't it? Goes in line with something they discussed in DevStream 110, where Scott talked about the idea of bite-sized Warframe missions. Here, have a look in case you missed it.
Will Kuva Survival ever get scaling rewards? Will the drop tables or the AABC system ever get touched? Sheldon?
Did you leave that question in, not knowing you were going to be here?
Weren't we all talking about it?
I wasn't talking about it. I have nothing to do with this.
So AABC came into the equation when the endless mission reward structure really became the way to get the most valuable stuff we were putting in the game, prime parts, prime keys, and everything. And now we sort of had that forever. And for a long time, we've been pitched from players, well, maybe by the time I get through it the third time, it's only C rewards, or it's only B rewards. And I think, like, whether or not we're talking about rewards or not, the fundamental thing is rewarding longer missions. And this is typically the crux of the Onslaught conversations and everything, is because it's, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And some missions you can go forever, well, for as long as you can, and some are go in and go out. So how do we figure our reward structure fits into all that at this point in time in Warframe?
It was a tough question. Sheldon and I talked briefly this week about it, more in the Onslaught vein versus the rest of the game, but we were talking about potentially adding more
letters, basically.
More letters, basically, is the easiest way to describe it. That reduces the number of rewards in the tables down to the more essential things. So the deeper you go, you have a better chance of getting potentially the better stuff.
Right.
That was never implemented, and it was never thing. It was kind of a discussion. So I don't think we really want to go down the scaling rewards route, personally.
Yeah, and the tricky thing for that, and I understand completely, is the pressure on endurance for being the ideal scenario when everything can be done in 20 minutes or less. And if you want to stay longer, that's totally up to you.
I still want to keep that bite-sized Warframe as the thing.
Right.
I don't want people to feel like, okay, I'm going to log into Warframe now. I'm going to commit the next 8 hours of this in order to get the things I want.
Right.
I still want the game to be, loaded up over lunch, loaded up, before your hot date, and you're going to go, 20 minutes.
To a 1950s prom.
Yep, exactly.
I think the only thing, I don't like the incentive to bail based on cycle, I think is the only reason why I can see a really strong argument for doing that refinement you're talking about.
Yeah.
where it feels almost like a penalty when you start looping again.
Yeah, because the tricky thing is, if you stay and risk the longer rewards, there's no point because the enemies are harder and you're not getting, you know, but obviously affinity with enemy level scales up. And that's a really interesting thing about all the efficiency and the onslaught conversations is because the way it was with the enemy scaling problems, the way we fixed it, and then the way we're going to continue to fix it with the dev workshop, which is basically efficiency changes are going back, level scaling's changing, and what else? Spawning, of course, will be fixed. And then just focus, right? Focus is a scaling reward in that game mode, but it's the XP scaling, which is already how the game works. Because XP scales with higher levels, so in this case, not only are you getting more affinity per kill, you're getting more focus per zone because it's scaling upward.
Yes.
So first, I don't even want to get into focus in this video because it's a travesty all in its own right. The sheer amount of focus a person needs to fully upgrade even one school and then unbind certain abilities is downright silly. Without a booster, it's really an effort in either futility or repetition, as there are like 3 places in the star chart worth going to in order to acquire focus. And check this out. Based on information I found on Reddit, it would take a person over 200 days of fully maxing out the daily focus cap to have focus fully upgraded. Come on now. 200 days? And it's not that easy to get to the daily focus cap, mind you. You really have to work at it. So, whereas I appreciate the additional help with focus these longer missions offer, most notably the new Sanctuary Onslaught mission, I still don't quite understand the lack of better rewards for notable endurance runs, as well as the need to keep everything bite-sized. It seems to me like most of the game is already bite-sized to begin with. Star chart nodes generally don't take more than 15 to 20 minutes to complete. Sorties are just 3 of these missions together. Cetus bounties, while sometimes having up to 5 sections, only usually take about 3 to 4 minutes to complete each section. The majority of Void Fishers, Syndicate missions, Invasions, and Alerts are single missions with only Void Fishers actually allowing the player to continue on for tangible rewards. So if you ask me, the whole game is already bite-sized to begin with. What's the issue with having a few game modes that don't necessarily follow that game plan? People can still log in at lunch and before a date? I don't know what that last part was all about, but, you know, the point is there's still plenty of bite-sized things to do before one heads out on that hot date, even if you do change this. I guess I'm just not sure I understand the argument against having a few areas in the game that require a bit more of a time commitment in order to achieve, with rewards of significance or even exclusivity to match the effort. But I think a lot of it stems from people not wanting to play that long in order to get a particular reward. And whereas I can see where they are coming from, I still don't necessarily know how that's an argument anyone can give weight to. The reason is there's plenty of mission types I, and I'm guessing other people, don't care for either, but if they wanted the rewards, you know, we all had to do it. Spy mission farming for Ivara comes readily to mind. I've never really liked spy missions, and even though I'm quite good at them now, I still don't care for them. But if I wanted to get her and didn't want to actually use my platinum to do it, I would have to essentially do as many of those missions as necessary, or I couldn't have her. Pure and simple. What's the difference here? If you don't want to push yourself to get those scaling rewards, don't. Just understand you can't get certain things. Seems fair enough to me. But what do you think? Would you welcome scaling rewards that offered some really interesting things in the later stages? If not, I'd like to hear why in the comments. As I said in the beginning of the video, I personally don't get why this is even a discussion, but I only really have my perspective to go off of. So maybe you can offer me that extra perspective that I need. I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. I got to tell you that. But at any rate, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I appreciate your patience with me getting my new content format in line. I feel like I finally have a handle on how I want to make future videos, so if my injured hands will continue to allow it, you should see more consistent uploads in the future. With that in mind, I hope you all have a wonderful day, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll talk at you in the next one. Bye.